All right, what's going on, everybody? Everyone heard about the news yesterday. Canelo Alvarez, Caleb Plant, undisputed fight. Looks like it's hit a snag in the negotiations, right? People are going to take sides. They're going to blame Canelo. They're going to blame Plant. Um, I'm going to try to give my opinion on this and be objective as possible because, everyone wants to blame somebody, and it depends on what side you fall on in terms of the fan base, right? If you're a Canelo fan, you're going to blame Plant. If you're a Plant fan, you're going to blame Canelo. If you're pro PBC, you're going to blame Canelo. If you're a pro Matchroom and DAZN, then you're going to blame PBC. And I've been very critical of PBC as of late. Early on, when PBC first came about, I was very supportive and I defended them a lot. But as time went on and you listen to what fighters on that side have said and what they've done, I just can't ignore the empirical data on how fights, just from whenever there's a fighter from that side of the fence or that side of the street, whenever they're involved in a potential big fight, there always seems a reason why it doesn't happen. And we can go down the list of reasons why, and we can also talk about how promoters love to do in-house fights as opposed to working with other promoters, because obviously there's more money involved if you can keep it all in-house. But let's talk about this situation, because I've kind of been back and forth on this. Initially, I was saying to myself, why wouldn't Plant just agree to everything? Obviously Canelo's the A side, and the A side, of course, is going to have the leverage, and they're going to utilize that leverage. It's always been that way, and it always will be that way. But that doesn't mean that the B side can't try to get the best deal possible for himself. So, the big sticking point before was the situation with Fox pay-per-view. Apparently, this fight, it was agreed upon that this fight would be on Fox pay-per-view because that would be the best situation possible for both fighters from a monetary standpoint, right? Having the fight on Fox, putting it on pay-per-view, uh, it they both fighters and their teams felt as though that would be the best possible scenario in order to get these guys the biggest purses possible, so you can have that back end pay-per-view money as well as the big guarantee up front. Because I think this fight would do very well on pay-per-view. I find it hard to believe that this would not be a successful event. I could be wrong, but I would not be surprised if this event would do upwards of 800,000 pay-per-view buys, 850,000 pay-per-view buys at $80 a pop. And I think it would sell out wherever they put it. So I think this would be a very successful event. And I think, obviously, I don't want to pay the pay-per-view price. I'd rather watch it on DAZN. But I think if I'm the fighters, I think that I would probably lean towards putting this event on pay-per-view in order to make the most money possible. So I get that. Originally, it was said, I think Eddie Hearn even said this, that Fox wanted Canelo for 3 fights, or PBC wanted Canelo for 3 fights, excuse me, which is, again, you shoot for the stars, whatever you get, right? That they put that out there. That was something that they tried to get. Whether or not they got it or not, they were willing to kind of back off that, and they agreed to just do the 1 fight deal, according to reports. So it seemed like that was the first big sticking point, and it seems like they rectified that issue. So now there seems to be another issue, and let's read this article from ESPN. And this is an article from Mike Coppinger, but it actually has quotes in it. So even though I've been critical of Coppinger for being wrong in the past, let's read some of Plant's quotes here. So he says, his bark is bigger than his bite. Canelo was offered the highest guarantee of his career. He was set to make 40 million plus, Mexican TV rights, and his Hennessy sponsorship. No problem. Let's fight. We gave it to him. They wanted upside of gate and pay-per-view revenue. No problem. Let's rumble. It was always agreed that, if there's a title unification, there's usually no rematch for either fighter, right? So towards the end of the negotiation, they asked for a rematch clause if they lose. No problem. So they gave him the rematch clause. So apparently the rematch clause was for Canelo, but from what I heard also, there's no rematch clause for Plant if he was to lose. So Canelo has a rematch clause if he loses, Plant does not. So that's another win. That's another win. So Canelo's got to win because he's getting obviously the pay-per-view, the bulk of the pay-per-view. They were giving him all of the Mexican TV rights, so then they weren't even asking for a cut out of that, which is understandable. And he was going to get the majority of the pay-per-view. Again, like I said, A side always gets that anyways, so that's not a problem. And then he got the rematch clause, which usually doesn't happen when it's a undisputed unification. Usually there's not a rematch clause. There's only a rematch clause if it's a champion versus a challenger. So they conceded that point. So Plant doesn't have a rematch clause. Canelo does. So that's another win for Canelo. So Plant told ESPN he agreed to his side of the deal 2 weeks ago. No arguments about money or stipulations. Besides the one-way rematch clause, it would only go into effect if Alvarez lost, like I just mentioned, which Plant said he agreed to. There was also the matter of ring size. Alvarez and Billy Joe Saunders battled over this. Okay, yeah. So in the end, Alvarez got his wish of a 22 by 22 foot ring. Nevada State Athletic Commission called for a standard 20 by 20 foot ring. Plant agreed to it. So apparently, I guess, instead of a 22 by 22, this is going to be a 20 by 20. So that's another win for Alvarez. So it seems like Plant is conceding to everything, right? According to him, right? Looks good, right? No problems. But here is the big sticking point right here. It looks as though, right? So this one side that is absurd is if I get injured or sick, then he gets a late replacement for the same amount of guaranteed money. But if he gets sick or injured, then we got to wait for him. Plant added. So we're at 7.5 weeks from the fight. We've lost valuable time that should be spent promoting and drug testing for the fight of this magnitude. I question whether legacy or money is their real motive. We've been waiting for him to get done with his wedding, shooting his TV show, his golf tournament, and now they've tried to give him everything he wants and more to make the fight. And I'm more than willing, able, and ready to fight Canelo Alvarez on any date. Those are the real facts. And if anyone has something to say differently, we have the paperwork to prove it. Okay. So then it says talks could be revisited, sources says, but at this time is running out. If Alvarez plans to fight on Mexican Independence Day weekend, as he traditionally does, if he moves on from the fight with Plant, then it looks as though they're going to set their sights on Dimitri Bivol. Okay, so let's talk about this. Okay. So Alvarez is the A side. So people are going to say, oh, Alvarez is being a diva, blah, 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 blah. No, all people in Alvarez's position will utilize their leverage. Anyone in life would utilize their leverage. If I was in that position, I would utilize my leverage. If you were in that position, you would utilize the leverage. But I do have a problem with this. And I've never seen this and never heard of this ever being in a contract. So if Plant gets injured and has to, if it gets injured and the fight has to be postponed, right? Canelo Alvarez has the ability to get a replacement opponent. Now, because PBC is going to be the lead promoter here, right? They've already conceded that. So now PBC has to give him $40 million guarantee, regardless of who the replacement is. Nah, I don't agree with that, because if Plant gets injured and for whatever reason the fight has to get postponed, and Canelo Alvarez is hell-bent on fighting on that September date, right? He won't move off that date according to what's being said here. So then PBC has to come up with a replacement opponent for him, and then they have to guarantee him the $40 million. Now, I guess David Benavidez has got a fight coming up, I think, in the not so distant future. So he'd be out of the question. Like, who could they actually come up with as a late replacement for him, and how would they justify giving him $40 million? Like, who would be the late replacement, right? Who would they get? It would have to be one of their fighters, right? Who would be available? David Morrell maybe, but again, you're going to give him $40 million to fight David Morrell, and you're going to put that on pay-per-view, right? So I don't understand that. So and then Plant has to wait for him. So what if Canelo Alvarez tears an Achilles tendon and he's out for 6 to 8 months? Plant's got to wait for him. Plant can't have a fight in between. He's got to allow himself to be inactive. So it looks as though, everyone was sitting there saying Plant doesn't want this fight. He's not daring to be great. But if everything he said in this article is true, gave him the rematch clause, doesn't want any of the Mexican pay-per-view rights. When Fury and Wilder fought, they split everything down the middle, UK and US rights, internet, everything, all across the board. Plant doesn't want any of that, right? So, maybe they could throw Charlo in there. That's a good one. Mark Pickington says Charlo, but again, there would be it wouldn't be an undisputed fight, right? And how well would it do on pay-per-view? Should they still have to give him a guarantee of $40 million for that if that was to happen? So, Elysier Aficionado says that he believes Jermell Charlo is next for Caleb Plant. Well, we'll see. We'll see. But I'm just trying to figure this out. Why would they put something like this into the contract, right? Obviously, no Canelo opponent gets Mexican TV rights. LOL. Callum Smith, like, what about my fans? Well, again, it doesn't matter. When you put a deal together, there are, a lot of times, same thing with Wilder. Wilder got a piece of the UK pay-per-view. Is Wilder bigger than Fury in the UK? That's irrelevant. That's irrelevant. When Joshua fought Klitschko, it all depends. If you work out a deal where everything gets split 60-40, 50-50, that's the deal. It's deals have been done like that in the past. So, you can laugh at it all you want. That's irrelevant. Obviously, we know Canelo would be carrying, the rights there. He'd be the popular guy. But once again, it's an undisputed fight. And Plant is that IBF title holder. So by him having that belt, he brings significance to the fight. So you can LOL it all you want. So Wilder Fury was 50-50 both. Again, these are all opinionated statistics. If Plant was to negotiate, okay, I'm getting 30% or 40%, and his team said that's with everything included, then they could do that. It's not out of the realm of possibility. You can't act like deals have not been done like that. Deals have been done like that. So you can't sit there and say that deals have not been done like that. It's unheard of. So we're not gonna dwell on that. Just don't discredit other people's opinions because you don't like what you hear. It's been done before. Fury and Wilder have done it, So don't say that it hasn't been done before. So yeah, David Benavidez is fighting Uzgataki. Jamal Charlo is he gonna step to the plate if this fight falls through? But obviously, here's the situation. I think Plant is right. So if he gets injured, then Canelo can go fight somebody else, right? But, if Canelo gets injured, regardless of that's such a vague request. What if the injury is serious and Canelo is going to be out for an extended period of time, right? What if he gets injured and then he gets injured again and then like Plant just keeps getting strung along? Why not just say this? Why not just say if somebody gets injured, depending upon how long they're going to be out, if it's for an extended period of time, then the opponent has the right to fight a fight in between, right? So the IBF can't. What if the IBF decides they want to enforce a mandatory? What if Canelo, like I said, tears an Achilles or blows out an ACL and he's going to be out for 8 months, and the IBF orders a mandatory, right? What is Plant supposed to do, right? Plant. It seems like a unreasonable and almost an impossible request to try to predict the future, because you don't know what type of injury could be suffered in a training camp, and you don't know how long a fighter is going to be out. What if he breaks his hand and he's got to be out for 4 months? So Plant just supposed to wait for him? So if that's true, then it makes no sense that would have to be in the contract. I've never heard of it. So if that's what's holding this fight up, then I got to be honest with you guys. If Fox is the lead promoter here, and they're the ones that are putting up the money. Obviously, Canelo is the A side. We realize that, but Fox and PBC are the A side promoters here. They're running the show. So you're going to sit there and tell Fox, or you're going to tell PBC, hey, guess what? If for whatever reason, Plant gets injured, you got to come up with the replacement for Plant, and you got to guarantee me that $40 million. It doesn't matter who it is. Should Canelo get $40 million if he were to fight Charlo? If he were to fight David Morrell? Should he? Or if he were to fight Anthony Durrell? So that's the thing. Who would they be able to put in place of Plant to warrant a $40 million guarantee, plus put it on pay-per-view, plus get that back-end pay-per-view money? I'm going to tell you something, guys. If you think about it, this is an undisputed fight. This is a legacy fight, but this could be, and I believe this will be, if this fight comes off, I think this fight will be Canelo's highest payday to date, because he's going to be getting a $40 million guarantee, right? Plus the back end of pay-per-view, right? So if you think about it, if it's, like I said, I believe this will do 800,000 to 850,000 pay-per-view buys conservatively. Then you add the Mexican pay-per-view revenue into it. This guy, this could be far and away Canelo's highest payday. Far and away Canelo's highest payday. So I hate to take a side here, but I'm gonna have to side with Plant here. I'm gonna have to side with PBC here. Now, obviously, PBC, as of late, have been the stumbling block and have created a lot of obstacles in making a lot of big fights. Gervonta Davis, Lomachenko, Gervonta Davis, Tevin Farmer, Charlo doesn't seem to want to unify with anybody, right? They have the situation with Spence not fighting Crawford, Wilder not fighting Joshua. I can't ignore the history of PBC creating problems, dealing with the other side of the street to make the biggest fights and the most significant fights possible. But I don't think they're doing it. I don't think they're doing anything wrong here. I think they're negotiating in good faith. They're doing everything they can to make this fight possible. They're conceding to all the points, right? They've given in to all of Canelo's demands. But this last demand is unprecedented. I've never heard of it before. How do you put that into the contract? How does that even make sense? How does that even make sense that you could tell somebody, okay, if I get hurt, regardless of the injury, you got to wait for me, and then PBC has to provide me a replacement and guarantee me the same $40 million up front. That's outrageous, guys. Let's just be real about it. And you can't sit there and say, well, Canelo's the A side. He could do whatever. Okay, he could do whatever he wants, but there's got to be a point where some of these demands become unreasonable. You can argue about all the catch weight shit in the past. Everyone's done the catch weight shit. So again, we're not going to sit there and just single Canelo out for that. But in this instance, right? In this instance, this is an outrageous request, in my opinion. It's an outrageous request, in my opinion. Does anyone think that if Plant were to get injured, right, and then they have to find a replacement, can you name me one opponent on the PBC side where it would make sense for them to guarantee Canelo $40 million up front and give him that pay-per-view fight? Name one opponent that you think would justify PBC doing that for Canelo. I can't. It's one thing being the A side. We're not going to ever take that away from Canelo. We're not going to ever say that he doesn't have the right to utilize his leverage that he has. Okay? The 3-fight deal went down to 1 fight. He won that one. He's got a one-way rematch clause here, which is another rarity. Whenever you have, like I said, not to sound redundant, whenever you have a unification or an undisputed fight, there's either a rematch clause for both sides or there's no rematch clause, right? So, yeah, but David Benavidez is fighting in August. He's fighting Uzgataki. He's not going to be ready for September unless they scrap that fight and they give Uzgataki some type of money. David Benavidez is actually a better fight. I agree. But again, he already has a fight. Will he be ready in September? You know, he's training for Uzgataki, and then all of a sudden, would he just decide, hey, you know what? I'm going to try and get out of this Uzgataki fight, even though I signed the contract. Will he be ready for Canelo in September? Who knows? Who knows? Because we're almost in August right now. We're almost in August right now. So we're almost in August right now. So how's that going to work out? That's the whole thing. So in this situation, man, I just don't understand this demand, right? Does Plant, like, it's not even Plant. You got to look at it from PBC side. You're asking them to guarantee this guy $40 million, regardless of who the replacement's going to be. And to me, the only guy that they would be able to fill in was they could probably throw David Morrell in there, right? They could throw David Morrell in there. But once again, that's not a pay-per-view fight. It's not a pay-per-view fight. It's not a $40 million guarantee fight. At least not in my opinion. I would venture to say that I don't think PBC would want to put up $40 million for a David Morrell fight. So if I'm being objective here, all along I was kind of saying I'm not so sure if Plant wants this fight. But again, you know, he's not doing anything wrong. He's trying to get himself the best deal possible. It's like he's doing what anyone else would do. He's being advised by Al Heyman. So if they're going to put this fight on Fox pay-per-view, then, you know, Heyman, PBC, and Heyman Boxing LLC, they're in charge here. If they're putting up the money, right, they have to have somewhat of a say of what's going on here. And it seems to me that they've gone above and beyond for Canelo thus far. They've got and people are criticizing why do they have to ask her for a 3-fight deal? They're looking out for the best interest of their company. They're trying to maximize revenue. They're trying to make a good business decision, right? But they realize Canelo would not agree to that, right? because Canelo has a great relationship with Matchroom, so I'm sure he doesn't want to freeze Eddie out. But once again, you got to give credit to Eddie Hearn. He's willing to take a back seat here. He's going to be involved from an advisory standpoint. He's going to help Canelo out, but he's not going to be the promoter here. He's not going to be the promoter here. He's stepping back. So give Eddie Hearn credit for that, right? But Canelo realizes that if Fox is going to give him a $40 million, or if PBC, excuse me, is going to give him a $40 million guarantee, and then he's going to have the pay-per-view rights of Mexico and he's going to have the pay-per-view rights here. This could be I would predict this is going to be his highest payday ever. It's going to be his highest payday ever. Right? So I don't know what else to say. I don't know what else to say about it. What do you guys think? See if we can put give me a second here. Give me a second here. I want to open up a poll. I'm going to put a poll in the chat, right? And I'm going to ask you guys. I'm going to ask you guys who's really at fault here. Give me a second. Have to open up the YouTube and the other. Yeah, so I'm going to put the poll in here real quick. So whose fault will it be if this fight does not happen? I'm curious to see what the people in the chat think here. Here we go. Yeah, right now, I think that PBC has been more than fair here with everything. Scant Rants is saying Hearn's giving Canelo bad advice. Well, we don't know what Hearn is actually telling Canelo. I don't think Hearn's giving him bad advice at all. I don't think by telling Canelo to take a $40 million guarantee and getting the lion's share of the pay-per-view is bad advice. I think when it's all said and done, Canelo can make $80 million for this fight. It sounds ridiculous, but that's the case. Ness, what's going on, brother? How you been? Good to see you, man. Yep. Ness jumping on late, but yeah, we're talking about this, Ness. And big thing here is if I think PBC is bent over backwards for Canelo. They've conceded on the one fight deal. $40 million up front. He's going to get the Mexican pay-per-view, all of it, right? He's going to get the lion's share of the pay-per-view, right? But this whole thing about, telling PBC if Plant gets hurt, then you gotta provide me with a replacement, and you gotta guarantee me that same $40 million, right? And you have to put this fight on pay-per-view, right? That's crazy. That's crazy. Benavidez is tied up. Charlo could step in, but will he? Right? David Morrell, he could step in. But are any of those opponents gonna warrant PBC giving Canelo $40 million and putting this fight on pay-per-view? That's the thing. That's the thing. Oh, it's 50-50 right now. 50% think it's Canelo's fault. 50 think it's I'm sorry, I misspelled that fault. Right? Yeah. Yeah. So I mean, in my opinion, man, I think it's Canelo's fault. I think it's Canelo's fault. So we'll see, guys. I mean, that's unreasonable. That's an unreasonable request, in my opinion. I just think it's an unreasonable request, in my opinion. Hate to say it, but that sounds like $40 million, man, regardless of who you fight. That's the issue we had with the zone, right? That's why the zone had a problem with that multi-year contract they had, because if they couldn't get the opponents to justify, they were anticipating a Golovkin fight. They were anticipating mega fights, right? But there's just not enough mega fights out there. People want to talk about pay-per-view, right? But at the end of the day, there's only so many fights that are mega quality type fights that you could put on pay-per-view. So that's why I believe, and I think most fans believe, that you have to be very selective on what fights you put on pay-per-view. Now, is Canelo in that status where you could just put him on pay-per-view against anybody? I'm not so sure, man. I'm not so sure. Right? Could you put Canelo and Yildirim on pay-per-view, and would that have sold? So Canelo was expected to get pay-per-view money over at the zone for every single fight. He was supposed to get, or he was expecting, it seemed as though, to get this big guarantee every time out, right? Regardless of who he fought. Now, with the Showtime situation with Mayweather, they realized that, they weren't going to break the bank with every opponent. They knew that with the Guerrero fight, the Maidana fights, they weren't going to make a shit ton of money. But they felt as though they'd make up for the losses with the Canelo fight, with the McGregor fight, and with the Pacquiao fight. But you have to ask yourself, what opponent is out there for Canelo? Where is Canelo's Pacquiao? Where is Canelo's McGregor? Right? How many super fights does Canelo have out there? This is a very significant historic event, because this will be an undisputed. I think this will be the first time in the history of the sport that we have a 4-belt champion at 168. So there's a lot of significance riding on the line here, right? So this is a very historically significant fight for Canelo, right? And I think it could be sold and marketed as such. So that could garner a lot of interest from a lot of people, right? But the fact remains, people want to talk about who's a pay-per-view star, what fight should be on pay-per-view, what fight should not be on pay-per-view. And in this era, we just don't, I don't think we really, I mean, you could say Anthony Joshua is a pay-per-view star in the UK. And Wilder and Fury did very, very, very good numbers. So Fury, you could say, is a pay-per-view star based on, who the opponent's going to be. Fury Joshua would do huge numbers. I think Fury White would do good numbers in the UK. I think Fury Wilder is going to do pretty good numbers here in the US. Spence does good numbers. Spence Pacquiao is going to be great. Spence did respectable numbers, pretty good numbers with Mikey Garcia, right? But gone are the days when you had Mayweather. Gone are the days when you had Mayweather doing $1 million every time out. Gone are the days when you had Pacquiao doing $1 million every time out, right? Because these guys had the opponents, right? And everyone was going out there to watch these guys fight in the hopes that they would have that mega fight at the end of the tunnel, the light at the end of the rainbow, right? So everyone was trying to see, if Pacquiao could outperform Mayweather in his performance. And the Pacquiao fans who were like, oh, Mayweather's stalling out these negotiations. They were going to watch him just to root against him so he could lose. These fighters today, there's no, with the exception of guys like Wilder, Wilder and Fury, very outspoken. They talk a lot, right? They're very good self promoters. But you have these other fighters out there that they're not really calling each other out. Like people want to talk about Rolly, but Rolly's is out there promoting himself. He's trying to generate interest in himself, right? But these fighters, it's a different era now, guys. It's a different era. So it's going to be hard to sit there and say that this is the era of pay-per-view, right? I don't think the United States really does have that one solid pay-per-view star like we had when we had Mayweather. I don't think we have another Mayweather. I don't think we have another Tyson. I don't think we have another De La Hoya. No one in the United States has stood out and separated themselves. Now, Wilder has the potential to be that guy. If he beats Fury, then he was to go on and fight Joshua. I think Wilder can do respectable pay-per-view numbers, pretty solid pay-per-view numbers every time out if he were to win both those fights. Then he could fight Dillian White. If Dillian White comes over, he's supposed to come over and fight here. But gone are those days. Gone are those days, of the pay-per-view star. Right now in the United States, we don't have anyone that separates themselves or stands out right now. We just don't. Yeah, we already went over this, and the argument that I have, and I'm going to repeat it for you because you came on late, is the fact that if Plant gets injured, then PBC would have to provide a replacement and give Canelo that same $40 million, which is ridiculous. I have never heard or seen anything like that in any contract, and I've been watching this sport. I'll be 52 in December. I've been watching this sport since I've been 10 years old. Since I was 10 years old, so I've been watching this sport for over 40 years, and I've never seen anything in a contract like that. So yeah, we've already covered that. That is ridiculous. That is ridiculous that PBC would have to come up with a replacement and still guarantee him that $40 million. So I mean, if you're being objective here, it's really hard to not side with PBC side on this one. It's really hard. It's really hard. Benavidez is fighting already in August, and I'm telling you right now, he's in camp training for Uzgataki. You can't give him, you can't give him less than a month to train for Canelo and expect him to be ready in September. It's not fair. It's not fair. He's fighting in August. Maestro says, is Canelo really acting like a diva? It seems totally out of character. Was he getting this in the DAZN deals? Well, this is why the DAZN deal, the whole situation with DAZN fell through, because once again, DAZN was under the impression that they could pick and choose the opponents, right? They didn't want to just sit there and give this guy whatever he wanted, regardless of who he was fighting, because it just doesn't make sense. Wake up ringside. Canelo Alvarez is running boxing right now. So this is a man fan comment. This is a man fan comment. So you think that PBC should pay him $40 million regardless of who he fights? Well, we're going to have to, we're not going to be able to agree on that one. We're going to have to disagree on that one. That makes no sense that he would expect. And this is the same problem he had with DAZN. This is the same problem he had with DAZN. DAZN wanted him to fight. They were expecting him to fight guys like Charlo. They were expecting him to fight guys like Andre. They were expecting the third Golovkin fight. And all these fights they never got. You got Yildirim. You got Rocky Fielding, right? You got Callum Smith, with all due respect. A decent fight, but not a great fight, right? You got Danny Jacobs. Good fight, not a great fight. What mega event? The Billy Joe Saunders was a pretty big event. Got a lot of attention. We have that, but there's never been that super fight. They've never gotten that super fight out of him yet, right? That's why they had to restructure the deal. That's why there's no long-term deal anymore. That's why he's a free agent, because no one's willing to give up that Floyd Mayweather deal anymore. That 6-fight, multi-mega deal anymore. No one's willing to do that. No platform or broadcaster is willing to do that anymore because the sport in the United States is so volatile, right? The illegal streaming definitely plays a factor. So the fight was to go ahead. It wouldn't matter. And B, you think the contract is due to numerous fight being canceled due to the pandemic? Has nothing to do with this, bro. The restrictions are over, bro. And I also talked about this earlier, Heyman's World, about how fighters don't promote themselves anymore. But guys, I got to break out of here. Thank you so much for tuning in. Maybe I'll jump back on later. I got some things I got to take care of right now. But thank you so much for people commenting in the chat. Beeb is out. Talk to y'all soon. Have a great day. Maybe I'll jump on later, like I said. So make sure you check out the Ringside Reporter, 6 p.m. Eastern time every Sunday, right before the Boxing Voice goes off at 7 o'clock. Make sure you check me on the Roundtable every week, 8 p.m. Eastern time, every Thursday with D-Style and the crew. Beeb is out. Talk to y'all soon. Have a great day and take care. Thank you so much, Maestro. Peace out, everybody. And we'll see you soon.